is there any reason to be playing the original Game Boy in 2026? Sure, it's got great games. It's got huge nostalgia. Just this controller and everything, this like it just feels so good, right? And your copy of Tetris. But is there any reason to actually play this today? Well, the answer is no. No, there isn't. Not in its original format. These screens, guys, are terrible. I am shining it directly at my light here so that you guys can kind of see it. But if I turn it on here, let's try to get a focus on that. You can barely see that. So one of the disadvantages of Game Boy, especially with playing it with my brother back in the day, was if you were in the car and you were trying to play this thing, it was a real pain in the ass. There's so many better ways to play the Game Boy nowadays. We have things like the FPGA Analog Pocket. We have the Hyperkin Super Boy. You can pop a Super Game Boy into that, believe it or not, which is kind of crazy. Super Game Boy is actually a better way, in my opinion, to play your Game Boy games, right? It's just, you know, it's got the TV element to it, so you can play it on your TV, and you can load up your Game Boy games, and you can play them just like you would. This one here in particular doesn't have the clock rate fix, but this one does. This is the Super Game Boy 2. Super Game Boy 2 is a great way to play your Game Boy games on your Super Nintendo. Definitely one of the ways I recommend doing it if you're a real hardware guy. If you want to emulate, that's okay as well. You can start doom scrolling because there's just so many choices. It's nice to have a physical card to do these things. This is the Hori Super Game Boy Commander controller. It has the ability to mute, slow your game down, speed your game up a little bit, and you can access your menus of your Super Game Boy and all that stuff. Plus, one of the things about the Super Game Boy, guys, is that you can actually get custom borders and custom sound effects and graphics that were built into some of these games. Like the one we're seeing behind us is actually a custom one. That's Donkey Kong Land 3, which is really crazy. So what I'm really trying to get down to, guys, there is a point where nostalgia gets a little bit too crazy. And buying these pieces of hardware to actually play the games, the intended experience was actually so limited that it's actually terrible today. The fact that the Game Boy does not have a true backlight is not a charm at all. It's actually a really painful thing trying to find a spot to sit down and play your Game Boy. Because if it's too sunny, you can't play it. If it's too dark, you can't play it. You need the right amount of light, and it can't be reflecting in a certain way. And it's a real pain in the butt to actually play that. When you get into things like was it the Game Boy Light? Light Boy, that's what it was called. And it does points a light basically at your screen with a magnifier. It still looks pretty damn terrible. I wouldn't recommend that either. I would go with something like maybe a Game Boy Advance if you want to play it on the go. You can get an IPS backlit screen for your Game Boy if you really want it, but that takes away from the original intended experience as well. So do you really need it? No, you don't need it. I think one of the best things to do if you're a Game Boy fan is to play on an FPGA device or say a IPS modded screen or a Super Game Boy, or you know what, it's probably just best to emulate. You can also do Nintendo Switch Online for Game Boy, which is kind of cool. But then again, you know, some of these games, when you blow them up to a big screen, they look kind of terrible. There is a point where nostalgia is just that, and the limitations of the hardware are just too much for today's modern audience, or even going back with my old eyes and trying to play it. We'll see you next time here at Coifish Gaming. Bye, everybody.